Coming up on today's edition of Locked On Eagles, the wild card matchup with Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is set for the Eagles for Sunday at 1 p.m. How can the Eagles pull off yet another upset as the underdogs against Tom Brady and the Super Bowl champions? That's coming up next on your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right. Welcome into playoff week, ladies and gentlemen, Eagles fans across the globe. We thank you for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. And today's podcast is brought to you by OnlineGambling.com, the place to be for all the latest gambling news and tips throughout the NFL playoffs. Visit OnlineGambling.com/NFL to get the edge over the competition throughout this year's playoffs. I'm Louis DiBiase, your host of the only daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast on the Twitterverse, on the internet, on every podcast app that you listen to the show, on YouTube as well, Monday through Friday. And I'm hoping this is not going to be the last game week of the 2021 season, but it could have been non-existent altogether if the Eagles did not run the table essentially down the second half of the season, go 7-2 in their final 9 games. I should say 7-3 in the final 10, but who's really counting last week's meaningless game against the Dallas Cowboys? And the Eagles find themselves at 9-8, and they have punched their ticket into the playoffs. Next Sunday at 1 p.m., they play Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Not ideal. You know, I'm more of a Saturday night kind of guy. The Sunday night game, I like the primetime matchups for the playoffs. The playoffs are already this, amplified feeling. There's a lot more weight to it. And especially if it's at night, I remember growing up, always used to get way more nervous for the primetime games. The nation is watching you. You're the only game on. But at the same time, even at 1 o'clock on Sunday, it's going to be the only game playing as the Eagles are one of just 14 teams remaining alive in the NFL. I did not think we were going to be talking about that this year. I did not expect a playoff berth, but yet here we are. So now that they're in, right? Just like Donovan McNabb, Jalen Hurts in his first year as the full-time starter, in his second year, pretty much the same thing as McNabb in 2000, he faces the Buccaneers in his first playoff game in the wild card round, just like Five did. Only this time he's got to go up against Tom Brady. And the Eagles in 2000 did not have to deal with that. There were chances to play the Rams last night. There were chances to play the Arizona Cardinals and the Dallas Cowboys. There were some scenarios after the Eagles lost on Saturday night to Dallas that kind of opened some things up. There was like a 70% chance, 80% chance they were going to play Tampa if they won that game. Losing it opened it up a little bit, but again, there was more of a 50-50 split, Tampa Bay versus the field, that the Birds were going to have to play the Buccaneers. And to me, this wasn't really the team I wanted to play. Even with the roster holes, my co-host Gino Camilleri and others have been pointing out about Tampa, like if you're going to get the Buccaneers, now is the time to get them. A beat-up secondary. Tom Brady's down to just Mike Evans at wide receiver without Chris Godwin now and Antonio Brown. The Eagles are hot, so there is an opportunity against this football team. I understand those takes, and I don't think this is a game that you can just chalk up to easy one and done. The Eagles are certainly going to get bounced. Are they the favorite? No, not by any stretch, but it's certainly a winnable game. For me, however, I just, you don't want to play the defending champions in the first playoff game. You'd like to avoid Tom Brady for as long as possible, considering still, despite being the oldest active NFL player, he still has the most passing yards in football with over 5,000 on the year, and he has the most passing touchdowns in football as well. And even though the Buccaneers have some holes, like this is a brutal matchup. They're 7-1 in their final 8 games, or their last 8 games, I should say. So it's not like they're truly struggling, compared to their certain standards. At times they haven't been the same team, that game where they got shut out by the New Orleans Saints. But overall, this is still a pretty daunting task for Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts and this Eagles team in their first playoff game in a new era. So it wasn't ideal, but at the same time, doesn't it kind of feel fitting, right? It does kind of feel fitting for an underdog to get Tom Brady and the defending champs, right? I mean, it does feel like they're kind of wearing that mentality again, that chip on their shoulder they had in 2017 and 2018 and 2019. It does feel like they're kind of embracing that again. So the NFL said, okay, you're the underdogs. Here's the champ. Here's the greatest quarterback of all time. Let's go see what you can do with them. It's an exciting opportunity. At the same time, it's a pretty daunting task. So now that they're in and we know who the matchup is at what time, now how do they upset this team? Now they're in the playoffs, got the shirt on. Now let's talk about how you get a win, because this is not, a team that, although the expectations were not probably to make the playoffs, certainly to compete, but probably not to make it. At the same time, this doesn't feel like a Seattle Seahawks 7-9 type of miracle, or, Washington last year, or even though, it's crazy, all these teams I'm talking about almost or did win playoff games. That's just the NFL in parity. But like the Tim Tebow led Denver Broncos, all these teams, the story was about just getting there to the playoffs, right? And making it. And although Eagles fans aren't going to be devastated if this team doesn't win, because they're already kind of playing with house money, at the same time, this isn't a pushover team that should have no chance. Like, now that you're in the playoffs, there is enough talent on this team that has won a championship, that is battle tested, that you should be competitive, and that, you maybe shouldn't expect a win, but we should definitely talk about it, right? We're not going to this whole week just talk about the journey and how happy we are to be here. You got to talk about how the Eagles could potentially upset Brady and the Buccaneers before, or right now, because they have done it before as the underdogs against this quarterback and against this team in the past too. So we're going to get into that coming up next, guys. This is the Locked On Eagles podcast, and today's show is sponsored by Built Bar. It's the new year, so that means New Year's resolutions. If yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes just like a candy bar, if not better. It is all of the flavor and none of the guilt, because it's covered in 100% real chocolate and it feels like you're eating a candy bar. But guess what? There's only 130 calories in every bar. There's only 4 grams of sugar. There's only 4 net carbs, and there's 17 grams of protein. Head over to built.com and get 15% off by using the promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15. And you're going to find so many incredible flavors when you're there. I mean, they've got coconut almond and peanut butter brownie, raspberry, cookies and cream, salted caramel, mint brownie, many more. Whatever your taste buds love, Built Bar has it for you at built.com. And I can get you 15% off today when you use the promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15 for 15% off your next order of some delicious Built Bars at built.com. Guys, this is your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, Locked On Eagles. I'm Louis DiBiase, riding solo for the day on this Monday edition of the show, taking a first look at the Eagles' first playoff matchup in 2022, the 2021-2022 season. Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, they face Tom Brady and the defending Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Gino will be back on the show tomorrow. He's been working down in Austin, Texas at the CGS All-Star Game. It's one of those college showcases like the Senior Bowl, like the East-West Shrine Game. He's a scout down there, really helping out some players potentially live on their dreams and get drafted or, head to a training camp this offseason. So, he's trying to really evaluate those prospects down there. So, that's the thing is, like, I just bought my plane ticket too for Mobile, Alabama today. I'm headed down for the Senior Bowl in just 3 weeks. And it's hard not to get ahead of myself because I loved the draft season so much. And for Gino too, like, it never stops for Gino. He's always evaluating prospects. I'm not trying to rush the Eagles playoff run right now. I'm enjoying this week so much. I've been enjoying this run incredibly over the last month or two. Again, I got the shirt. Like, I was that guy. I bought a playoff shirt. I'm really buying into right now the journey this team is taking us on. But at the same time, like, seeing the Colts lose yesterday and the Dolphins right now, those two picks have you set up in the 15th overall slot and 16th overall, going to the Senior Bowl soon, Gino at the CGS All-Star Game. It's hard not to get a little excited for the draft season as well. It's our favorite time of year and really can't wait. But Before that, the Eagles have at least one playoff game to play this Sunday against Tom Brady in Tampa Bay. And how are they going to pull off the upset? Because as I said in segment 1, this is not a game the Eagles should be favored in, but at the same time, this is not a game that you should just say the Eagles have no shot. I mean, even earlier this year in a game that the Eagles were just not looking good against this football team, Tampa Bay, on Thursday Night Football, they still found a way to only lose 28-22, and they pulled within one score with about 4 minutes left in that fourth quarter. If you go back and listen to the podcast, it was mostly negative because that Eagles team played like garbage for 3.5 quarters, and they did their typical first half nonsense where a lot of garbage time points. They made it seem closer, but they did have a fighting chance. And this is a very different football team, as head coach Nick Sirianni said today. And I do think they have a much better chance of beating Tampa Bay now than they did then, not only because of how good of football the Eagles are playing and they're buying into who they are, but also because, as I said, Tampa Bay has some holes right now on this roster. They are not indestructible as they have looked in the past. So how do they pull off the upset? I think there's a lot that you can learn from the game earlier this year and Super Bowl 52, the last time the Eagles beat Tom Brady. The last two matchups, they lost to Brady and New England in 2019, and then earlier this year, Thursday Night Football against Tampa Bay at the Link. So the last time they beat Brady, the lesson you can learn from that and the loss earlier this year, if you want to pull off this upset, one thing you have to do is be aggressive. You cannot be conservative, not on offense and defense, and you have to be opportunistic. The Eagles won a title over Tom Brady throwing for over 500 passing yards. Why? One lesson you should learn, this is what the defense did that they need to learn what not to do in the Super Bowl and earlier this year. You cannot just sit back as much as they did in both games and let Tom Brady carve you up. Let him take what you're going to give him. Because guess what? That's what Tom Brady does. And the Eagles this year against star quarterbacks allowed over a 70% completion percentage pretty much every time. I mean, it was really bad the first half of the year. And you look at why did Tampa Bay get up to such an early lead in that game earlier this year? And why did Brady have the opportunity to throw for half of 1,000 yards in one game in the biggest game in Eagles history against the Eagles defense? Because both times the Eagles sat back and were too scared to get beat by Brady, when in actuality, that strategy was allowing Brady to beat them. So one lesson is to be aggressive on defense and on offense. Jonathan Gannon cannot do what he did earlier this year against any quality quarterback opponent. You cannot just sit back and let them carve you up underneath. Anything below 20 yards, you said you can take it. You have to go for it. You have to blitz. You have to press. You have to play man coverage. You have to let Darius Slay shadow Mike Evans. If Steven Nelson is up against Mike Evans a lot in this game, I got news for you. It's not going to go well. Even without Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown, that should be more incentive to let Slay follow Evans, because there aren't other guys that you could justify Slay needing to be on too, like Antonio Brown, who to me was the best receiver in that first game they played. So you need to do all those things. You need to bring everything you've got and go for it. And do not be scared to have Tom Brady beat you, because he's going to beat you the other way too. So you just got to go for it and let your guys make plays. And that's the one thing this defense at least did in that championship game back in 2018 is, although Brady carved them up, they were opportunistic. They did get that strip sack in the red zone. They also held the Patriots multiple times on 3rd and goal and forced Gostowski to attempt field goals, that one he made and one he missed. So you got to be opportunistic and you got to go for it. And that's not just on defense, but it's on offense as well. The reason this Eagles team won a Super Bowl, the reason that there is a Super Bowl ring on my desk that I can literally put on my finger, and for my YouTube listeners, you can see I literally have a Super Bowl ring. And why were the Eagles able to achieve that? Because on offense, they were also aggressive. Then they threw the hell out of the football. And I'm not saying that Jalen Hurts on Sunday needs to be what Nick Foles was in Super Bowl 52. He is not going to be that player. I've got news for you right now. This team needs to run the football. That is who they are. That's what got them here. That's what got them back in it against Tampa Bay earlier in the season as well. Like, they really didn't get back into that football game until Miles Sanders started carving them up. By the way, Miles Sanders today, good news on the Sanders front. Nick Sirianni said that he's hopeful Sanders will play on Sunday, and that'll be big because, as I said, Sanders was a key reason the Eagles only lost by 6 in that football game. So they do have to stick to what they are, what makes them great. But at the same time, it's going to be a lot harder. Tampa Bay against the run, they're good. They got Vita Vea up front at nose tackle. They've got Devin White. They've got some really good players on that front four, the front seven entirely, that first and second level. Tampa Bay's got some crazy good players, and it's strength against strength. The Eagles have the best offensive line in football. They have the best run offense in the NFL this year, most rushing yards in franchise history, number 1 rushing attack in football. So you're not going to go away from that mentality, but at the same time, it's going to be harder. And if Tom Brady has the success that he did against the Eagles the last 3 matchups, Jalen Hurts is going to have a performance that is not what it was against Tampa Bay earlier this year in the first half, where that was still when Nick Sirianni was having this Eagles team throw like 80% of the time, right? Sanders didn't get going till the fourth quarter, and Jalen Hurts was not up to the challenge. High volume, low efficiency. He's going to have to be able to throw the football. He's going to have to look like the passer he was 2 weeks ago against Washington, as opposed to the player that the other times he needed to pass a lot against star quarterbacks, he wasn't able to step up. I'm not saying the volume's going to be what it was like the last game. He's not going to have to throw for 45 attempts in this football game. If you're going to win the game, you're not going to be able to do that. Like, that's not the strategy, but he's going to have to be opportunistic. He's going to have to be efficient when he does throw the ball, and he's going to have to pick it up a little bit. I'm not saying he's got to do what Nick Foles did in that Super Bowl. I'm not saying he's got to complete 70% of his passes on 40 attempts, but he's got to be a better passer than he's been the majority of this year. He's got to be the passer we saw against Washington both games, against the Giants in the second half a couple weeks ago, against the Denver Broncos, against the Los Angeles Chargers. He needs to be that efficient player that makes smart plays, that keeps plays alive with his legs, but he's also using his arm as well. Those are, to me, some key strategies against this football team if you want to pull off the upset. Guys, today's Locked On Eagles is brought to you by OnlineGambling.com. Eagles fans, we're all looking for an edge these days, and I'd like to thank OnlineGambling.com for sponsoring today's podcast. If you don't know already, OnlineGambling.com is a website dedicated to giving gamblers the edge. Throughout the playoffs, they're providing you with the best NFL tips, news, and more to help make your bets as informed as ever. OnlineGambling.com gives gamblers the edge by providing the best and most trusted experience online all day, every day, inspiring every gambler in the world to beat the odds. Don't make emotional decisions with your hard-earned dollars. Make informed decisions with information sourced by experts. Be sure to consult OnlineGambling.com before placing your bets. They're on a mission to be the world's most empowering gaming and betting site, giving gamblers the edge by providing the best and most trusted experience. Visit the website for NFL tips ahead of the NFL playoffs, and make sure you visit onlinegambling.com/NFL for all the latest gambling news and tips to give you the edge throughout the playoffs. Remember, onlinegambling.com/NFL to make the most of this year's playoffs. Guys, today's show is also sponsored by Get Upside. I got to tell you about this incredible app that everybody who buys gas needs to know about, especially with gas prices the way they are right now. Our listeners are making up to 25 cents for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and use the promo code Touchdown and get a bonus 25 cents per gallon on your first fill up. That's up to 50 cents in cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Again, you can get 50 cents per gallon in cash back on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot are making as much as $200 to $300 a month in cash back, and there's no catch. The cash back gets added right to your account. You can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Again, download the free Get Upside app and use the promo code Touchdown. Guys, this is Locked On Eagles. I'm Louis DiBiase, your host. We're taking the first look at the Eagles wild card matchup on Sunday at 1 p.m. against Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I'm talking about the blueprint for an upset, because although I've loved the journey the Eagles have been on, to me, making the playoffs has been enough to satisfy me for the offseason. Did not even expect the Eagles to get this far. Very happy with the steps they took this year as an organization in the first season of a rebuild, of a new era. But at the same time, this is a winnable game. They've beaten Tom Brady before at the height of his powers. They have made it close with this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team before this year. I think that they can win this football game. And again, being aggressive and going for it on both sides of the ball is really going to be the key. You cannot sit back and let this team beat you. You got to go for it. And on offense, you got to run the football. But at the same time, Tom Brady has success against pretty much everybody he plays to a certain degree. And Jalen Hurts is going to have to be the efficient passer he was in his last start against Washington. But Jalen Hurts, no matter what happens on Sunday, he found a way to get his team into the playoffs. And I can't say the same about my former guy, Carson Wentz. And so I was pretty quiet yesterday on the Twitter front when it comes to Carson Wentz after he helped blow the Colts' playoff chances against Jacksonville. The Colts lost to the worst team in football to miss the playoffs. And Carson Wentz saved one of his worst performances for last. He was horrible, forced the football, interceptions, fumbles, just all of the negative, sides of Carson Wentz reared their ugly head at the absolute worst time. And I tweeted it out. I said, look, hard to defend Carson Wentz today. He was horrible. At the same time, I didn't go really any further. I didn't make any points about it. I kind of just let it sit after that. And I want to make sure people know, I wanted to bring it up on the show today because this is pretty noteworthy that Carson Wentz and the Colts didn't make the playoffs and the Eagles did, despite the Colts being seen as a potential powerhouse in the AFC. They're the ones that gave the Eagles a first-round pick for the win-now quarterback. The Eagles were seen as the rebuilding team, and the Eagles are in the playoffs, and Wentz and the Colts are not. I mean, troll. Like, I'm not going to hate on Eagles fans right now that are making fun of this and that are really enjoying this. I would too. I mean, to lose your franchise quarterback, a guy that demanded a trade, and he doesn't make the playoffs. Everybody's talking about, like myself, man, how much this team could miss this guy. And there's so many people that say how much they miss Frank Reich, and those two miss the playoffs the way they did, and the Eagles make it. It certainly does feel good because the Eagles have felt like the ugly stepbrother of this situation over the year, right? But they found a way and the Colts didn't. And going quiet on Twitter yesterday was not me hiding from being wrong about anything when it comes to my Carson Wentz takes. It wasn't anything like that. I just didn't think people wanted to hear my perspective again because I've talked about Carson Wentz a lot. And, I've seen both sides, but I've been a supporter of Carson for sure. And I didn't want to tweet this because I didn't have the energy yesterday for an all-out war. And that was going to happen if I said what I was going to say. So I'm just going to say it on the podcast and said, look, it was a complete choke job by Carson and the Colts yesterday. And it shines a light on the horrible traits that Wentz has developed. And they've been amplified the last 2 years, especially, that he has just not been able to fix. He is seen really right now as the new Jameis Winston, right? He follows up an elite throw where there's a linebacker here, a safety over top, another safety here, a corner on the left. There's just this impossible bucket, and he finds a way to fit that ball to whoever the receiver is, right? And then he follows it up with a crazy bad interception, a forced throw, a fumble, a forced play where he's trying to keep the play alive, takes a really bad sack for like a 15-yard loss, right? That's Carson Wentz the last 2 years. It's really been a roller coaster, and it was especially amplified the last 2 seasons. And it looks, again, like I said, trolls are allowed to go after this. They are 100% justified, and it looks really bad for Wentz right now because he missed the playoffs and the Eagles didn't, with Jalen Hurts getting in his first season taking over for Carson. So I'm not backing down. I'm not trying to say that, Carson, it wasn't on him yesterday. It was on the offensive line. The last 2 games, it was a choke job, and him not being vaccinated was totally a factor. Like, he seemed groggy, he seemed rusty, and that's on him. Like, on unvaccinated players, it's just like, there's really no excuse. Kirk Cousins and the Vikings too, you get what you get. And so that was part of it for sure. I'm not trying to deny what a horrible choke job that was. That was maybe the low point of Carson's career, even over anything that happened last year. I think that was lower than getting benched against Green Bay last year, to be honest. Because again, all you got to do is beat the Jaguars to make the playoffs. The 2-14 Jaguars, 2-15 Jacksonville Jaguars. Like, yeah, that's it's a choke job. But I think people are, again, just, I'm always trying to find the middle ground in life, and with this debate and with pretty much everything in sports. The people that are taking it as far as like he deserves what he gets now, the kind of takes that people are using this as like a referendum, kind of confirming what they knew about him from 2016 to 2020. This is why I didn't want to tweet it out, because I still don't agree with that. This was, in a vacuum, a horrible choke job by Carson, and it did show a lot of the bad traits that are consistent in his game that make it really tough to tell if he can be the guy or not for a team anymore, because there's so much good still. There's so many elite throws. Look 3 weeks ago against the Arizona Cardinals. You look at his yearly total, he had 27 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. Like, he was, again, very efficient as a passer, as he normally is, but there's just some of these plays you just cannot have that kill games. Like, you can win because of Carson Wentz, but there's so many times where you can lose because of him too. With Jalen Hurts, it's like you don't win a lot because of Jalen, but you don't really ever lose because of him. Whereas Carson is that more radical, all the way left or all the way right kind of player. And it makes it really difficult to evaluate that kind of guy, especially the last 2 years. But again, some people are taking it farther and saying like, yep, this is who he was. Like, he deserves this, as if he was some sort of choke artist in Philadelphia. I mean, did we not watch 2017? Did we not watch 2019? You can say a lot of things about Wentz and criticize his time in Philadelphia that I will not debate. The fumbling he'll never fix it. And he'll keep saying in his press conferences, I got to be better with the ball. You can totally criticize him on that. You can totally criticize him on struggling at times to find the middle ground of when to keep a play alive and when to play hero ball. The last 2 years, he plays hero ball 24/7 as a runner. He really does not know when to just call it quits. So I agree with all that. But the choke artist thing, like, did he choke yesterday? Yeah. But he's won some big games in his career. And I don't want to go back into the is Carson Wentz a clutch quarterback debate, because I don't think that yesterday confirmed anything about the past. Does it say something about him right now? 100%. I don't like being a prisoner of the moment in that way. And again, I just don't think this year proves that like 2020 was who he is. I still think 2020 was the anomaly in Wentz's career. But you know what this year and yesterday did confirm as well? That 2017 was the anomaly as well. Carson Wentz is not an MVP caliber quarterback, but he's also not what people are saying he is right now. I think he's still a starter in this league. He's still probably at his best, a top half quarterback. But I just think they're taking it a little too far, and they're taking their victory lap. And for sure, Eagles fans should be feeling really good about this situation, because you traded him away. You got a first round pick and a third, and you're the team that made the playoffs. So yeah, it's awesome. But I just think people are taking it a little too far. And I thought if I went in on that on Twitter yesterday, it would have been a nuclear explosion. Carson is the 2018, 2019, 2021 quarterback. That's who he is. He's a guy that plays with more reckless abandon now. And he can find great days and horrible days. And there's not a lot in the middle anymore, unless you're running the ball with Jonathan Taylor a whole lot. And that's kind of who he is. He's a little more out of control version. Like, the 2021 Carson Wentz was just the 2018 and 2019 version revved up a little bit with the mistakes. Maybe not even a little bit, a lot. He only threw 7 interceptions. And in the passing game, he's normally mistake-free for the most part. But the inaccuracy, the fumbles, the forced plays are still there. And they're actually increasing. He's not getting better at that with age. He's actually regressing in that area. And it's probably a tough spot to be in if you're the Indianapolis Colts, because, are you going to draft a quarterback in the first round next year? You don't have a first round pick. The Eagles have it. And Carson's good enough to probably want to still be patient with this, but it's probably a tough spot to be in. Just like the Eagles, though. The Eagles are in a tough spot at quarterback too. A lot of teams are. And it was interesting last night to see all that go down. For sure. But it's definitely good for me too. Like, even as much as I still like Carson Wentz as a player. I'm definitely an outlier when it comes to the majority of fans and media members. But at the same time, it feels good for me too. I did not want to see Carson Wentz in the playoffs and the Eagles out of it. Like, that would have been tough to swallow, even as somebody that defended Wentz more than pretty much anybody. I didn't want to see him in the playoffs. I didn't want to see him thrive. You know, it's kind of like that friend that leaves the crappy part-time job that you're at, and then he goes off and finds a better job, and you're sitting there at that other job still, right? That's not what happened. Your job actually became a whole lot better, and he went to the other job and probably is thinking, man, the grass isn't always greener, for sure. Not that he wasn't justified at the time, but that's kind of the theme of this segment, is that, you know, hindsight's 2020. Don't be a prisoner of the moment. But definitely take your victory lap. And I thought I would address it because I didn't want people to think I was being a coward on Twitter yesterday. I'll address it, and I'll enjoy it too. The Eagles are in the playoffs, and this is not the scenario I would have predicted, that Indy is at home and Philly is playing on Sunday against Tampa Bay. So that's a first look at the playoff game. Those are my thoughts on Wentz. We'll get more into the matchups to watch in this playoff game tomorrow with myself and Gino Camilleri. We've got a show Wednesday as well. We've got Thursday's crossover Thursday with the Locked On Buccaneers squad. We've got Locked On QB1 Friday. We've got full coverage for you all playoff week long. So make sure you subscribe to Locked On Eagles wherever you get the show. We're available on all platforms, on YouTube as well, and on Twitter at Locked On Birds, at DiBiase LOE, and at GC24_football. As always, thank you for downloading. Thank you for listening. And thank you for making Locked On Eagles the first listen each and every day. Let's go Birds.